It's time to breathe again on the latest Breath of Fresh Air webcast, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. So, I am your host, Charles Taylor, for tonight. Patrick Brackett couldn't make it with me. He is up with family in Georgia, and no, he'll be gone next week too. So, he'll be gone the next couple of weeks. He has family to take care of, and next week he'll be with his wife on a trip. So until then, shoot, I guess being frank, I might not be available next week myself. More to come on that as the days come ahead. But let's get right to it with our college football review and preview. So let's start with the review portion. And let's see, it was one of those weekends where you didn't know how things were going to come out. Uh, there were a lot of matchups that looked like they were going to be blowouts. But you know how it is in college football. A lot of times it could go either way. And the weekends you don't think much is going to happen are the weekends where the most chaos happened. And while the end results look like everything stayed according to par, and they did, and we'll get into the college football playoff rankings here in a little bit, but it was close to being absolute just mutiny going on. Michigan, the number 3 team, they went down or almost went down to Illinois. They pulled that out with the last second field goal, 19-17. TCU, they had a scramble drill to get their field goal off and survive Baylor's upset bid down in Waco. They won that one 29-28 for the last second field goal. And Georgia, they won 16-6 at Kentucky. But if you saw that game, that wasn't easy either. Kentucky was just hanging in, battling, and Georgia just had to survive. Ohio State, their score, it looks better than it did. But Maryland was hanging with them the whole time. So right there's your top 4 teams going through struggles. USC had a good win against UCLA. That was offensive shootout like I figured it would be, and I'm sure a lot of people thought it would be, 48-45. And surprisingly, it was the defense for USC that closed it out. Normally, when you have these shootouts, it says the team with the ball last will win. Well, UCLA had the ball last, or they had a chance to at least tie the game, but USC forced the interception from DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So those two quarterbacks were going back and forth between DTR and Caleb Williams for USC. And USC, I mean, they won a typical Lincoln Riley coach team win, shootouts. No offense, not a lot of defense, but they got the interception when they needed to have it. North Carolina, bad loss to Georgia Tech over the weekend, messed up their hopes to have an outside chance at maybe getting into the college football playoff, because they would have had North Carolina State, and then they're looking at a matchup with Clemson in the ACC championship game. But that loss to Georgia Tech knocked them out of any hope. And Arkansas looked really good against Mississippi the other day. 42-27. So Ole Miss, that's 2 losses in a row. And South Carolina, load out Tennessee. 63-38. Spencer Rattler actually looked pretty decent in the game. Well, beyond decent, he looked great. I mean, he was making some dime throws. And honestly, that was the quarterback a lot of people expected him to be coming out of the school in Las Vegas and then going to Oklahoma as a highly recruited quarterback. Everybody knows that story, what happened last year, where he got benched for Caleb Williams. Of course, Caleb Williams went to USC, and Spencer Rattler ended up transferring to the other USC, I guess, on the East Coast. But it looked like everything came together there. Tennessee's defense is really, really bad. And we knew it was bad coming into this game, but to give up 63 points to a South Carolina team, the week before, they got blown out. They got blown out in Florida. The Gators put it on them down in Gainesville in the swamp. So no one really saw that performance coming up. But again, college football throughout the year, anything can happen. Is crazy. And that right there was the chaos that did happen. And of course, we know it could have been a lot worse if it appreciate it. Thanks for the comments over there on Twitch. I try to be well spoken as much as I can, but so I'm glad that you sent that comment. I really appreciate it, and I'll try to keep it up as best as I can. But yeah, I mean, South Carolina surprised a lot of people, and then for them to hang up 63 points on Tennessee again, they were right there in the college football playoff rankings going into this week. They were number 5. Looked like they could have had an outside chance as long as they took care of their business, but that hope is long gone. One more win or one more game from last week, Utah and Oregon. That was a very good game late out there, Pac-12 after dark in Eugene, and Oregon was able to hang on and beat Utah 20-17. So they control their own destiny to get into the Pac-12 game, and if they're able to win, then they will face USC in the Pac-12 championship game in Las Vegas. So that is your review. Let's get to the preview of what's coming on. Very interesting week as we get into rivalry week. I always have a tough time saying that, but rivalry week is upon us, and we will get into those games in a minute. But Spencer Rattler draft stock, before you go, I don't know how high it is going to be right now. I see 3rd or 4th round right now. If he was able to, if he decides that he is going to come out, the quarterback draft looks to be really, really good, really, really heavy. Bryce Young should be probably coming out from Alabama. CJ Stroud should be coming out from Ohio State. And then you have a lot of other guys. We'll see what happens with Will Levis and Hendon Hooker, who had a bad injury. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But yeah, I see 3rd or 4th round right now. But because he plays quarterback, don't be surprised if he goes a little bit higher than that because of the need there is for quarterbacks. So there could be a team that takes a chance on him in the 2nd round and say he could back up the starter, and then go from there to see if he's able to take that spot eventually or sit for a few years or for a year, whatever it may be. But to answer that question, don't think he'll go any higher than the 3rd or 4th round right now, but don't be surprised if he goes 2nd. I don't see him getting drafted in the 1st round right now, but if he's able to put together a few performances and have a good workout, we'll see. And again, the quarterback position, very, very well in need. So I could see somebody taking a chance a little bit higher in that draft. So before we get to the preview of these games, let me point out the chart, the Power 5 conference games of the week. So you guys know Patrick and I have been picking 5 games each week to preview. We switched it up a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but there are the updated stats. So both of us went 3-2 from last week. I still hold my 1-game lead in the competition for the year. We'll see if that changes this week. But to go through the games last week. So the Pac-12 game, there was 2 Pac-12 games, as a matter of fact. I missed both of those because, all right, so Patrick and I both had UCLA beating USC. We were wrong about that. And he got the Oregon game right. He had Oregon beating Utah 20-17, and he got that one right. So there's where he got me, and then I got him on the SEC game. He had Ole Miss beating Arkansas. I picked Arkansas. I got that one right. And then we both got Michigan and Illinois right, although we always got that one wrong. And then in the Big 12, the Texas-Kansas game was the game that Patrick picked for us to pick, or for us to see if we could get the pick right. And we both picked Texas to win. And Texas won by a lot more than what we had. And Texas looked really, really good. It makes you wonder where has that Texas team been all year? And they show it in stretches. Me being a Texas Longhorn fan, I can't tell you how much angst I feel throughout the year when it comes to this team. You know the talent is there. It's just a matter of if they can put it together. And They just have to continue to build toward that consistency. But there's the records right there. 3-2, both of us were. I still hold my 1-game lead. Ha ha, ha, Patrick. But you did better than your 1-4 mark that you had the week before. So always going up. So with that, let's get into some of these games going into this week. So I have 5 games, and I kind of jumped around here because again, it's rivalry week number 1. Number 2, it's just one of those weeks where anything can happen, just like it did last week. And of course, when you throw in the state wars, the border wars, you just never know what can happen. So I'm going to jump around. I don't necessarily have 1 game each per conference, but here's the 5 that I do have. Let's start in the Pac-12 with Oregon and Oregon State. So for those who don't know, this game is called the Civil War within the state of Oregon, and it is one of the most contentious and heated rivalries there are. Now, not a lot of people know about it because, well, it's a West Coast rivalry, and a lot of people seem to forget about what's going on in the West Coast when it comes to playing some of these sports. But us over here at Breath of Fresh Air, we always have an eye on what's going on, even on the West Coast. So this game right here, I mentioned what's at stake for Oregon. They win, and they're in the college football, not the college football playoff, sorry, the Pac-12 championship game against USC. All you have to do is win, but it won't be easy. This game is in Corvallis, so on Oregon State's home field, and it is always a tough back and forth rivalry here. With that being said, I do like Oregon to win this game. I just don't think Oregon State scores enough. I think when it comes down to playing the better teams within the conference, you saw it against USC. They had USC on the ropes, but couldn't score enough. They lost 17-14. They had Washington on the ropes. They lost that game 24-21. If you're playing against these teams, you have to be able to score at least 28, 30 points to give yourself a good chance to win. And I don't know if Oregon State can score enough with Oregon. It looks like Bo Nix, the quarterback for Oregon, will be all right. Seen a couple of reports that says that his ankle is getting better. He didn't look that good against Utah. He basically just played on one leg and was able to cut it out, and give Oregon's defense credit as well for being able to hold Utah down. And that was a game that Oregon really needed, not just for the reasons of keeping themselves in the race for the Pac-12 title, but Utah had been pushing them around. They got whooped last year twice by Utah, and both of those games were not close. They got whooped in Salt Lake City, and they got whooped in the Pac-12 championship game last year, and Utah just pushed them all over the field. This time, Oregon showed some grit, they showed some toughness, and they were able to, well, beat Utah at their own game. So give Oregon, the Ducks, credit there for showing some physicality, and they're going to need more of that physicality when it comes to playing against Oregon State. I think they will. I have Oregon winning by a score of, we'll go 31-24. I think it will be close. I think Oregon State will be definitely pumped up for that game. I mean, it's one of those heated rivalries, so I don't expect Oregon to walk in there and blow them out. But I do think they'll be able to pull this out, 31-24, and they will see USC in the Pac-12 title game with that win. The next game, Notre Dame and USC. So USC, with the win over UCLA, as I said, they clinched their spot in the Pac-12 title game, and they will play. Could be Oregon, could be Washington. It just depends on what happens during the week. But there's more at stake for USC right now. They are right there with a chance to get into the college football playoff. And if they win out, if they are able to beat Notre Dame and then beat maybe Oregon or Washington, who both of those teams are pretty good, USC has a legit shot to get into the college football playoff. Now they're playing a Notre Dame team that is starting to peak. And we know they had 3 losses earlier. One of those losses was to Ohio State. The other two kind of inexplicable and inexcusable because they lost to Stanford, who's been terrible this year, and then they lost to Marshall as well. But they've been stepping up their play, and it looks like the physicality that Marcus Freeman, the first-year coach who took over for Brian Kelly once he went down to LSU, is starting to get that team to play physical. They're running the ball very, very well. Strong up the middle, being physical on defense as well. We remember what they did to Clemson, dismantled Clemson, beating them 35-14, and that score wasn't even telling the story to how that game really went. That Notre Dame probably should have won by more. I think they just kind of let the foot off the gas. They were up 28-0 in the fourth quarter. But this is an interesting game for me because of the physicality Notre Dame plays with. USC really hasn't seen that type of physicality. And like I mentioned, Lincoln Riley's their coach. Their teams don't play any defense. And it's the same thing in USC. And it's going to be up to Caleb Williams to put on the Superman cape. Now, I've always said if USC runs up against somebody who can actually play some defense, this is where they're going to struggle. This is where Caleb Williams, those plays he was able to make against most of the teams in the Pac-12, whether he's playing against Arizona State, we saw him last week against UCLA, those are going to be probably interceptions or sacks because the defenses are just better. They're more physical. They can get after him a little bit more. And I think Notre Dame can give USC a big-time battle. It's just a matter of can Notre Dame score enough on their end to keep up with what USC can bring on offense. We know I mentioned Caleb Williams. They have Jordan Addison and Mario Williams on the outside as well. But I actually like Notre Dame in this matchup. I think Notre Dame can win those hopes because of the physicality. Now, USC probably has more athletes, and with them being more athletic, it could give Notre Dame a little bit of an issue. But I think if Notre Dame can handle Clemson, they can handle USC. I know that game is out in Los Angeles, so USC will have the home field advantage. But I like Notre Dame in this matchup. Now, as you know, I'm not the biggest fan of either one of these teams. But I guess if I have to pick one, I probably like Notre Dame more than USC. But really, it just boils down to the physicality. When you are in these tough games, you have to be physical. You have to show that you can dominate in the line of scrimmage. It's the only way you are going to win championships, whether it's at the conference or either in the national championship level. I don't think USC is there yet, and I think it really runs up and gets some in this game. So I have Notre Dame winning a pretty close one. I think they can hold down USC's defense enough, and I got them winning by a field goal, or maybe by 6 points. No, we'll go field goal. I got them winning 31-28. And I think Notre Dame's physicality will be able to take over, and the closer this game remains in the fourth quarter, that's where I think USC start to feel that pressure. And I think Caleb Williams is going to start throwing some interceptions here in this game later on in the game. So I like Notre Dame there. Let's get to the game, as they call it. Michigan and Ohio State. So this is the Big Ten Conference game of the year. Some people will call it the game of the year. And to be frank with you, I'm not impressed with either one of these teams. Not at all. I think they are getting the pub because of the name on the jerseys, not really because of performance. They really haven't played anybody. Their schedules. I love how people want to talk about Michigan's schedule being terrible, but Ohio State has literally played the same people because they're in the same division within the same conference. So they played these same teams. Ohio State has a little bit of a bump because they played Notre Dame, but that was the first game of the regular season, and they struggled with that game. They won that one 21-10. Here's the thing with Ohio State. Ohio State has turned more into a finesse team. And I know Myron Williams, he's ran for a couple of 100-yard games, and they have Travion Henderson as well. But they're against inferior opponents. So I wonder what happens when the team and the quality steps up. Michigan, they run the ball well, but they're very one-dimensional. They can run the ball well. They can play some good defense. But when a team takes that runaway, what are they going to do there? So here's how I decided this game, just to let y'all know, just to think how I'm going with this. Because because Ohio State, I feel, is a finesse team, I think they struggle when weather is in the equation. And you saw that in the game against Northwestern. Now, Northwestern, they're a one-win team. Ohio State should steamroll them. But they only won 21-7. People were making excuses. Oh, CJ Stroud couldn't throw in the wind, blah, blah, blah. And look, if you were able to run the ball a little bit better, then you should be able to win that game by more than you did. I mean, that game was 14-7 in the fourth quarter. So if there's weather in the equation, and you saw it last year when these teams played in Ann Arbor, Michigan pushed them around. They just ran the ball down their throats, and it was snowing in that game too. So that kind of slowed down Ohio State's passing attack, and they couldn't get enough of a running game. Michigan was also able to get pressure with Aiden Hutchinson and Ajabu, able to get after the quarterback, got after CJ Stroud a lot there. Now, both teams are coming in a little bit beaten up. Blake Corum, the running back for Michigan, Heisman Trophy candidate, we're monitoring his status. He had a knee injury in the game against Illinois last week. Travion Henderson, the running back for Ohio State, he was in a walking boot. And then Myron Williams, I think he's supposed to come back, but we'll see. And their receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba, we haven't seen him much all year after the year he had last year. So both teams are dealing with some injuries. So one of the main things that I used to try to decide this game was the weather, because I mentioned how Michigan pushed them around. And if it's a weather game, Michigan is better equipped for that because they can run the ball and keep things going if things start to bog down in that department. Looking at the weather, I've seen that it is supposed to be partly sunny and in the 50s. So if there is no weather there, I'm going to pick Ohio State to win. Michigan, I just don't trust them. I know they beat Ohio State last year, but that was the first time in years they beat Ohio State. And I don't know if I could trust them to make this a more consistent thing where the rivalry is a little bit more balanced instead of very one-sided. And I don't trust Jim Harbaugh to be able to make adjustments, really. I don't really trust Ryan Day a whole much more than Jim Harbaugh. But if they take the run away, if the Buckeyes are able to take the run away, I don't see how Michigan's going to be able to move the ball because the passing game is way too inconsistent. So I'm going to pick Ohio State to win this one. I think Patrick said he's going to take Michigan there. I'll get his picks and I'll update them as they come out as the games go for next week's show. But I don't see it with Michigan. I mean, look, I would like to see Michigan do it, honestly, because I think Ohio State is supremely overrated, just like I think Michigan is a little bit overrated themselves. But I don't see Michigan winning. Not in Columbus. Maybe if they were playing in Ann Arbor again, I could see it. But I'm going to go Ohio State here. I think they'll be able to put something together on the offensive end, and they will win this game. I think I'll go, let's say 27-21, something like that. I do think the defenses will show up. I wouldn't be surprised if it is 42-34, but we'll go with that score. Actually, no, okay, 30-24. I'll go there, and I pick Ohio State to win this one because the weather is supposed to be partly sunny and in the 50s. If it was a little bit colder, if it was supposed to be snowing, I know they said there might be a chance of rain and snow, but if they're saying it's going to be partly sunny on the National Weather Service, then I'm going to pick Ohio State to win because there's no elements in there. So, and I just don't trust Michigan enough to say they will beat them 2 years in a row. So I'm going to Ohio State 30-24. That's my final score for that one. Let's go to a couple more games here. Let's go to the Egg Bowl. Mississippi State and Mississippi. Another very, very heated rivalry within the state of Mississippi. I have a lot of family in Mississippi. Those lines are always drawn clearly. Whether you're with the Bulldogs or with the Rebels, they will let you know. I mean, they represent the fullest for their teams down in Mississippi. This game is interesting because Ole Miss is coming off of losing their last two games. They got throttled in Arkansas last week, as I pointed out earlier, and they lost to Alabama the week before. And Mississippi State coming in with Will Rogers, able to throw the ball all over the place. Just wonder if, with the game being in Oxford, can Mississippi State get a running game somewhere? If they are going to continue to depend on Will Rogers to just throw the ball over the yard, and look, that's what Mike Leach does. Mike Leach is going to throw the ball. We know that about them. But when they play better opponents, that other dimension gets pointed out, or the other dimension missing gets pointed out. And I don't think it'll be any different here. This is also interesting because you have some rumors out there that says Lane Kiffin might become the next head coach in Auburn. Nothing is set in stone yet. I guess they're having some meetings, and we'll see what happens. It's Lane Kiffin. Wouldn't be surprised if he did end up coaching Auburn. But he has it pretty good in Ole Miss. So I could see it going either way there. But as far as this game goes, I'm going to pick Ole Miss to win. I think they'll get it together enough. They have all the motivation in the world with it being this rivalry game. So I think Ole Miss will be able to pull this out. We'll go 34-24. Actually, no, 37-24, because Mississippi State's defense isn't all that great either. So I think Mississippi will win pretty solidly. But yeah, a few turnovers here and there, and again, Ole Miss has been struggling a little bit themselves. This could go the other way. This could go toward the Bulldogs, but I'm gonna go Ole Miss 37-24. I think they'll win this one pretty solidly. The final game on the list, let's go to South Carolina and Clemson. So this isn't necessarily a rivalry within the conference. Of course, South Carolina's in the SEC, Clemson's in the ACC. But we have a game that became a lot more interesting with South Carolina's blowout win over Tennessee. So now they come up to Death Valley, and they will meet the Clemson Tigers there. Look, South Carolina, they've just been hot and cold because, again, the week before they blew out Tennessee, they got blown out by the Gators down in Florida. So I don't know what South Carolina team is going to show up here. This was obviously a big win for them, beating Tennessee, a top 5 team, and they're going to see number 17 in Clemson. So they're in their home field. So I think South Carolina is going to play well. They're going to play inspired, but I think Clemson has a little bit too much for them in this game. Again, South Carolina, they're going to come in hot, but again, Tennessee's defense is really bad. I don't know if Spencer Rattler is that good, like he showed last week, throwing for an excess of 300, 400 yards. I think he'll be able to put up a little bit on Clemson, but not enough to win this game. I just think Clemson has the better team. And with this game being in Clemson, I see the Tigers winning this one. So I will go 30-16 or 30. We'll go 30-20. 30-20. I think South Carolina will show up. They'll be ready to play. Shane Beamer with South Carolina, he has that program going in the right direction now, and they have been lacking for a few years now. But he does have them believing, he does have them thinking they can compete with anybody, and that win over Tennessee shows what they might be capable of in the future. But I just don't think it really shows up in the game today or on Saturday against Clemson. So yeah, I'll go Clemson 30-20 with the game being in Death Valley. So that will do it for the review and preview. Before we move on to some of these other topics, let's get into the college football playoff rankings because they came out an hour ago. And excuse me, you have no change in the top four. So Georgia, they stayed number one. Ohio State still number two. Michigan still number three. And TCU is still number four. LSU is going to 5 now. So they're fifth, and USC is at 6. So that's interesting because LSU, they're a 2-loss team right now. But they do have a chance to go in there and wreck the whole playoff, because if they're able to beat Georgia, I have a tough time believing the committee would keep them out of the college football playoff, especially if they beat Georgia, undefeated, top-ranked Georgia team in the SEC championship game in Atlanta. If LSU is able to win that game, I don't see where they keep them out. So the Big Ten loser, or excuse me, the loser between Michigan and Ohio State, that's going to be for a pretty precarious position. You're going to have to sit back and wait now because you're not going to be playing on championship Saturday. And so so that could be good or bad. You can sit and wait and watch everybody lose, or you can sit and wait, watch everybody win, and then you have to wait again to see what the committee is going to pick. So it would behoove them to handle their business, Michigan or Ohio State. So as it stands right now, both of those teams control their own destiny. They continue to win, they'll be in. But if whoever loses that game, now they're in a pretty precarious spot, because that would open the door for the potentially the Pac-12 winner, especially if it's USC, if they're able to continue winning and have just the one loss to Utah. Could open the door for LSU if they are able to beat Georgia in the SEC championship. Now, they have a game in Texas A&M, so make sure they handle that. They should be able to handle that. Texas A&M, with Jimbo Fisher coaching them, has been terrible. But playing in College Station, just never know. But it will be interesting. TCU, they play Iowa State this week, see if they can hold on. And then it looks like they will get Kansas State. If Kansas State is able to beat Kansas, they will get Kansas State again in the Big 12 championship game at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. They played a game earlier in Fort Worth in the season, and TCU had to come from behind to win that game. They were down 28-10, but TCU, that's the team they've been. They've been the come from behind team. So, like I always say with the rankings, I know it's good conversation. I know it's good for people to talk about them, to see what they can do with it. But all the stuff will work out. So if people are going to complain about the rankings, which you hear a lot of, don't worry. It will work itself out. It always seems to show who belongs and who doesn't. The cream always rises. So if there's somebody who's upset about a team being there, they'll probably get knocked off at some point, some way, shape, or form. And even if they do make it to the playoff, they probably won't. They probably won't do anything in terms of being in the playoffs. So we'll see how everything goes. But again, rankings, they always work out. A couple of other topics here before we move on to the NFL. I mentioned Hendon Hooker, the quarterback for Tennessee, how he got injured in the game, tore his ACL in the game against South Carolina, was faking a pitch, and his knee just buckled under him. Very tough injury to see, because this was a Heisman Trophy candidate. We know the year he had up to the point, putting up numbers on everybody. Of course, they got beaten. They were beaten by Georgia, but they were still sitting pretty good. So everything just went bad for Tennessee in that game. But Hendon Hooker's health and his career is first and foremost here. And it was bad to see him go down after the season he was having. So hopefully he is all right, and he can get back to playing soon. We'll see what happens with the draft stock going forward. And then in the SEC, I guess they threw a fine on South Carolina's fan base and also Vanderbilt's fan base because they beat the aforementioned Florida team on their campus in Nashville. So they put fines on the university because their fans storm the field, and they don't like it when their fans storm the field. It is I love field and court storming. I love it. I mean, I think it's good to see when students can go out there and celebrate with the players and the coaches when a big win happens. I mean, that was the biggest win in South Carolina in years. I don't remember the last time they beat a top 5 team on their field there at Williams-Bright Stadium. And Vanderbilt, I don't remember when they beat anybody in the SEC. Oh, to take that back, they beat Kentucky the week before. So they were, but before then, they were on a long losing streak in the conference. So look, if those fans want to storm the field, I say let them. Don't be the party pooper SEC. Just let those fans celebrate. Let them enjoy the moments. They haven't enjoyed moments like that in a while. And we also have to remember, when those students storm the field, they're celebrating with fellow students. Those players are students. Those players are in those same classrooms as the students who are watching from the stands are. You have to remember that. So they're literally celebrating with classmates. So I don't see anything wrong with some field storming. Don't be the party pooper. I know some places, I know the SEC wants to kind of make it like teams have been there before. They know how to conduct themselves. But come on, man. They're students. Let them celebrate. Let them party. Let them be kids. Stop trying to be the party pooper SEC. That's a rule that needs to change. Stop fining universities for being universities because that's what you're going to get when you have a lot of between 18 and 23, 24-year-old young adults. They're going to want to party. They're going to want to celebrate. There's nothing wrong with it. Stop being a party pooper SEC. Bad job on y'all. As a matter of fact, y'all should go into the STFU club. Haven't done that in a while. So yeah, go ahead and put the SEC, the whole conference, in the STFU club for continuing to fine universities for their students going and celebrating big victories. STFU club, SEC. Got it. Newest member. Okay, so let's move on to the NFL and just do a quick little review and preview there. The NFL. So the games that stick out here, you had the Titans just being the Titans. They beat the Packers, and the Packers were a trendy pick in that game because of their win over the Dallas Cowboys the week before. But the Titans came in, they did what they do. They were physical, they ran the football, they played good defense. And lo and behold, the Titans are 7-3, always in the mix. Other games that stuck out. It wasn't a whole bunch that stuck out. I mean, the Chiefs beat the Chargers 30-27. And look, the Chargers are going to continue to be the Chargers. This team has been 3 years away from being 3 years away for 3 straight years. All I keep hearing is, the Chargers are coming. Justin Herbert, he's coming. And look, Justin Herbert, to his credit, he played very well. But when push came to shove, Patrick Mahomes got the ball back, and Kansas City was able to pull that game out. Well, him and Travis Kelce were able to pull that game out. And once again, LA, I still call them San Diego because they were there for so long. But the LA Chargers, once again, come up short in a big moment. And now we have to continue to hear this talk of, they're coming. I like what they're doing. I like what they're building. Well, they've been building again for 3 years, or over 3 years, and they're pretty much still in the same spot. They have a 5-5 record. They're still average, and Justin Herbert is not the best thing since sliced bread. Sorry to tell everybody, all the people who always want to put him there, but he's just not that guy, at least not yet. And you have to get the team to the playoffs first before you can even be in that conversation. So that's the Chargers. That's where they're always at. The the Dallas Cowboys. All right, so they had a big game, big win, huge win over the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings were coming off of the win in Buffalo, and they were 8-1 going into the game. And a lot of people were saying, "Hey, maybe Minnesota's for real." And then they got smashed 40-3 at home by a Cowboys team that's uneven as well. Now, look, I guess y'all know I live in Dallas Fort Worth, so I got to hear all the time what the Cowboys are doing, what's going on. And now here they are again talking about Dallas is going to the Super Bowl now. You hear Jerry Jones, the owner, on the radio. Oh, I see Super Bowl in the future. It's going to be so great when the Dallas Cowboys spectacularly disappoint their fans again, because that's what's going to happen. That nothing in that game says Dallas is going to the Super Bowl. They are not 40-3 good. They just got hot. They caught a hot streak, and they beat down a Minnesota team that looked flat, and they're not as good as their 8-1 record. By the way, another thing about the Minnesota Vikings, their quarterback, Kirk Cousins. Y'all already know I'm not high on him at all. And I don't think the Vikings will ever win anything. They won't go far in the playoffs. They won't do anything with Kirk Cousins as their quarterback. When he is on the field, maybe it's just me, and I would like to get y'all thoughts on this. Kirk Cousins looks constipated out there. He looks like a guy who knows the lights are on him, and you have a primetime game coming up because they're going to be on Thanksgiving night against the New England Patriots. But he looks like a guy who just knows he's going to boo-boo on himself. Like he's going to have an accident on himself. He just looks constipated out there. He doesn't look confident. He knows that moment is too big for him. And it shows on the play. It's just like he just doesn't look like a guy who looks confident in the moments of truth. And he hasn't shown to be confident in those moments of truth consistently at all. It's kind of like Eli Manning. You remember when Eli Manning, he had what people would call the Eli face, just unaware of stuff. And look, and I love Eli Manning. He does a good job on the Peyton versus Eli shows that go on ESPN too. He's funny with his brother Peyton, and like when he needed to be clutch, we know he had that clutch gene on him. But man, those faces he would make when he was about to be a kid, it was so funny. That's Kirk Cousins just has that constipated look, like he's not ready to do anything in the clutch. So I just want to point that out. Let me know if I'm off base saying that he looks like he's going to boo-boo on himself every time he goes out there. Just let me know. But that's what I see Kirk Cousins, a guy who knows that moment is going to be too big for him, and he doesn't know what to do. Let's see. Is there anything else that really stood out? Hey, there's some teams that are looking like they're starting to hit their stride. San Francisco 49ers look like they're starting to hit their stride. Look good in a win against the Arizona Cardinals. The Washington Commanders look like they're hitting their stride. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything else kind of went according to the plan. The Raiders-Broncos game was the inept bowl, and the Raiders were able to pull that game out in overtime. And the Patriots won a 10-3 game over the Jets, and Zach Wilson looks terrible. And I think this is what the Jets get for drafting Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was not the guy that everyone was thinking he was coming out of BYU. He had one hot season, and everybody was trying to make these comparisons between him and Patrick Mahomes, among others, in terms of the arm talent and the arm strength. Give me a break. First off, the judgments and the projections y'all give these guys coming out are ridiculous. Can they at least get in the league first beforehand? And number two, Zach Wilson was never close to being that guy. And it's starting to show. Well, it's been showing. I mean, they did nothing. And then on top of that, Zach Wilson doesn't look like he's a leader anyway. He's not. He doesn't take responsibility for anything. You don't need a guy playing quarterback who doesn't take responsibility for anything. So we'll see, because the head coach, Robert Saleh, is basically saying everything's getting reevaluated. So if he's not in the starting lineup, I don't think they get any worse there with whoever they play. If it's Joe Flacco or whoever, then okay, cool, because you're not losing anything by benching Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson has shown you nothing. that says he deserves to stay on the field anyway. So those were the things from the review. So previewing these games, a lot of interesting games. I mentioned the Patriots and Vikings playing on Thanksgiving night. The Bills and Lions could be sneaky interesting also on Thanksgiving Day. The Bills had an interesting week. They had to play the game against the Cleveland Browns in Detroit because of the Snowmageddon event that happened in the Buffalo area where you had feet of snow. And now they just get to stay in Detroit and play the Lions on Thanksgiving Day. The Lions, all of a sudden, have won three in a row, beat down the New York Giants. So this is a game Buffalo has to be careful with. Looks like Buffalo should win. But the Lions can sneak up. They're going to play tough. Dan Campbell does have them believing. It's just a matter of can they put some things together. They have a 3-game winning streak to see if they can continue it. The Giants and Cowboys play each other on Thanksgiving Day as well. It should be an interesting game there. And we'll see if the Cowboys can carry on that momentum against that they developed from the game against Minnesota. Or are they going to be the Cowboys and go ahead and follow a spectacular performance with a spectacular loss? The Falcons and Commanders, interesting game. There in Washington, the Bengals and Titans rematch there of the playoff game from last year where Cincinnati knocked Tennessee out. Remember, Tennessee was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. A lot of people forget that, but they were the number 1 seed, and Cincinnati went in there and knocked them out on the way to the Super Bowl. So that's an interesting game to look out for. Mention the Falcons and the Commanders. Other than that, no, not really. I mean, you got these primetime games, Packers and Eagles, the Steelers and Colts, jeez. The Rams and Chiefs, the Rams are so terrible right now. There's just other than that, it doesn't look like there's a whole bunch of games outside of the Thanksgiving Day and early window with the Bengals and Titans and the Falcons and Commanders. It doesn't look like a whole bunch of games that stand out. But I will say, anything can happen because it is wide ass open in the NFL. There isn't a team out there that is standing out from anybody else. Not close, not at all. I know the Eagles have a 9-1 record. So record-wise, they look like they are putting some distance there. But there isn't a team in the NFL you're saying, oh yeah, they're far and away the best team and they should win it. Kansas City, their record looks good. We know what Patrick Mahomes can do, but Kansas City has struggled in multiple games this year, and they got beat by the Colts. So, so you just never know. The Chiefs aren't really separating from anybody, but they have the best record in the conference right now. We know Buffalo has struggled. Philly, they lost to the Commanders, and they almost lost to the Colts. So there isn't anybody out there who you are saying to yourself, yes, this team is ready to go. They are ready to win it all. Now, what you do have are some teams that look like they are rounded into shape. I mentioned the San Francisco 49ers. I am a 49er fan, by the way, so full disclosure. But you've been watching the 49ers. They're getting healthy. They're getting some people back, and they look like the offense is starting to click. And with that defense, they can play a defense that has shut out their last 3 opponents in the second half. The 49ers can beat anybody. So they're just as dangerous as anyone in there. And the Commanders, again, with Taylor Heineke playing quarterback and some of their weapons coming back with Terry McLaurin and Josh Dotson and some of those receivers there, Curtis Samuel. And that defense, they'll be getting Chase Young back soon on top of a defensive line that already has Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Montez Sweat. Washington looks like they could be getting going too. And I mentioned the Eagles, the Vikings look like they're coming back to earth. The Dolphins, the Miami Dolphins, they have an explosive offense. The Baltimore Ravens look like a team. If they can score a little bit more, their defense looks like they're coming together. And look out for the Cincinnati Bengals. Do not count them out. I know a lot of people want to say that was kind of a fluke when they did make the Super Bowl last year, but this is a team, they're going to get Jamar Chase back soon. And Jamar Chase is one of the most dynamic receivers in the league right now. When they get him back, that offense could be clicking at all cylinders, and it would be crazy. I think it would be crazy to count them out. They're not just going to give up the AFC title to anybody. And as it is, they're sitting at 6-4, which is pretty much where a lot of teams are sitting. So there's a lot of average in the league. So there isn't anybody can win this. Anybody. Well, unless you're the Houston Texans. Sorry, Houston, but the Texans are pretty bad. And Jacksonville. Sorry. But I mean, other than that, I mean, it's going to be pretty competitive. Well, Denver can't win it either. Look, there's some teams that don't look like they have any chance, but there are a lot of teams that are right there in the mix. So just keep an eye on it, look out, and see what happens there. With that, there isn't much left. So, I mean, I guess before I close, if you're into soccer, check out the World Cup. The World Cup is going on right now. You have Argentina, one of the favorites there with Lionel Messi. They went down today to Saudi Arabia, 2-1. I guess one of the biggest upsets that has happened in World Cup history. But Argentina's going to have to pick it up. Now they're going to have to probably win their last two matchups, and they will see Mexico and Poland in their next two games in the group stage if they're going to go and continue their chances in what looks to be Lionel Messi's, and it looks like this, I don't know for sure, but it looks like this could be his final chance at winning a World Cup with his national Argentine team. Basketball, of course, is going on. College basketball has kicked off. I saw my Texas Longhorns, they whooped up on Gonzaga. Let's go. Hopefully, when it comes to Big 12 conference play, you can continue that, because it seems like Texas teams in the past have been good in the preseason tournaments, or not even preseason tournaments, just tournaments that happen throughout the holiday season. But then they get in the Big 12 play and they end up finishing 5th or 6th in the conference. So we'll see if Texas can keep that up. But even Gonzaga, like they did, I think they won by 19 points, 93-74, something like that. If they can continue that, then hey, maybe the Longhorns can do something when it comes to NCAA tournament time in March. The NBA is going on still early in the season. Some teams, Boston, the Celtics are looking good. Milwaukee's looking good. In the Western Conference, it's funny. Utah and Portland are the ones that are looking good in there. And Utah was supposed to be tanking, but it looks like those young players are playing pretty good there in Salt Lake City. So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of sports going on. Of course, football is always heavy on the mind. So we're here for all of it. We're here to follow it, and we're here to talk about it, discuss. Go ahead, leave whatever comments, and we are down to respond to you. So with that, that is what we are breathing on for tonight. Y'all make sure y'all go to the Breath of Fresh Air YouTube channel, smash that subscribe button, and follow the Breath of Fresh Air Facebook page, and also give us a follow on Twitch if you would like. So until next time, I'll keep you guys updated if I'm going to be on next week. Coach Patrick, he won't be able to make it because he's got some family obligations to take care of. But if I don't see you next week, you guys take care. And also, everybody, let me be the first or one of the first to wish everybody out there a happy and safe Thanksgiving, no matter what you guys are doing. If you're going out and traveling, if you're going out to see family, or if family's coming to see y'all, I wish y'all the best. I know it doesn't seem like it a lot of times, but we have some things to be thankful for. And if we're still here on this earth, we're still breathing, then we're thankful to have that life. Things get tough, things get really, really rough around the edges at times, and there's a lot of struggles out there. But hopefully, we can continue to lean on each other, on our family members, on our close friends, to help us out, to help get us out of the rough, and we'll come out better on the other side. So, everybody, have a safe and happy Thanksgiving again, and I will talk to y'all soon. Until then, enjoy the games, and I'll see you on the other side. So y'all take care and take care.